Hey friends, this week we're going to talk about street photography and keeping our gear simple and minimalist. A lot of times everyone gets ahead of themselves in gear and thinking that they need this lens or that lens or they need all of the lenses to go out and make some good street photography. But a lot of times it's kind of the opposite. We want to simplify. We want to keep things as minimal as possible. So today I'm going to walk through my minimalist camera bag for street photography. Now I do have a full what's in my camera bag of all of my gear. I'll link that up here for you to check out. And in that video, I use a full backpack from Brevity. It's a wonderful backpack that carries all sorts of gear, but when I want to go out and keep things simple, it's way too much. It's way too big. And so I decided to pick up the ONA Bowery bag. This is simple. It just goes on one shoulder and keeps things minimal because it's not very big. I can't keep throwing things in here and just have all the stuff with me that I end up not using anyway. So I decided to pick this bag up and it has been wonderful. So we're gonna open it up and show you what I have inside. So at the moment, I have my film camera in here. There's kind of two ways that I set this up. It's either if I wanna go out and shoot film or if I wanna go out and shoot digital. And we'll get to digital in a moment because I'm filming on that camera that I use, so we'll swap some things out in a second. But for film photography, to keep things minimal, I have my Nikon FM and a 50mm f2 on it. And that's it. And I might throw an extra couple of rolls of film in here, but that just sits right in there, and there you go. This inside at the moment, I'll show a little bit here, has just kind of one big pocket, and then you can put dividers in here to make it your own, fit what you want, and then has a couple of pockets on the front. Now for me, when I go out and I'm doing street photography and I want to keep things simple, I slide my phone in one of these so that I'm not even feeling the buzzes of text or calls or anything like that. It's there for me when I need to check it, but I can just focus on what I'm doing when I'm out on the street. Also, I'll throw some business cards in one side. Every once in a while, somebody will ask what I'm doing if I'm a full-time photographer, and you want to make sure you have those on you. Also, some people ask, hey, why are you taking photos of me? If you get into that situation, you can say, hey, I'd love to send those to you. Send me an email, and I would love to send you a copy of that photo. Usually helps diffuse any situation that you might find yourself in. Although that doesn't really happen too often. People usually ignore you completely or just maybe question it to themselves, but they actually don't build up the courage to confront you. Now, when I do take this out for a digital photography shoot, I am always carrying some SD cards, extra SD cards. This is a little SD card holder that I picked up. I have both normal SDs and micro SDs because sometimes when I'm shooting POV street photography for you guys, I'm putting a DJI Osmo Action on my chest and that takes micro. So I always have extra SD cards in case something goes wrong, I fill something up. You want to make sure you have everything you need, as well as batteries. So I use the Fuji X-T3, which we'll get to in a moment, but I always have extra Fuji batteries with me. I have the one in the camera as well as two in the bag just in case they decide to die. Now, the one accessory that I bring with me is a little Manfrotto Pixie tripod. This is so small you can throw it in here, and if I'm out at night or it's getting low light and I want to do maybe a long exposure, I go ahead and throw the camera on here, just screw it into the bottom screw, and there you go. And I can set it up. Now, I'm not going to be setting this up in all sorts of crazy places. This isn't a Gorilla Pod, but this does give me the stability I need to get some of the photos that I want to make. Now, in terms of lenses, there are two that I bring with me most of the time when I'm doing digital photography. On the Fuji X-T3, it's two prime lenses. The first one and main one that I use for photo is the 35 f2. These lenses are just so small, and you'll see the other one in a second, but this lens is so small, it's weather resistant. On the APS-C system of Fuji, it's the equivalent of about a 52mm on full frame, and it's just a really sharp lens. I use this again for pretty much all of my street photography. It's just the right focal length for me in terms of getting in close enough but not being so wide and like all of that type of detail. And you stop this down a couple of stops to something like f6 out on the streets and you're getting just everything is super sharp. the image quality is great. I have done a couple of street photography sessions on this channel that I use this lens on. I will link a couple of those up here for you. The main one that I really enjoyed using on is when I was in Chinatown. That is probably one of my favorite videos on this channel, so check that out. Now I'm going to switch out to the Osmo Action here, so quality is going to drop for a second, but I'm going to show you the camera and other lens just so you can see that as well. All right, so now that we've switched over to the DJI Osmo here, I have the Fuji X-T3 as my main camera. I've had this for about 1.5 years at this point, and I love the images coming out of this. I know they have the X-T4, and that is mainly an upgrade on the video side, which I do not need as much. I am happy with the photo side and the video capabilities of this camera, but this is just a classic looking camera that is minimal, is simple. It's a mirrorless camera, so it's nice and compact. It's one of the reasons I went with this system. And then what I have here on at the moment in terms of a lens is the 16 2.8. As you can see, it's very comparable in terms of size to the 35 f2. It's equivalent to like a 24 millimeter on a full frame camera. So these are really it. This is my kit. When I go out on the streets, this is what I'm using. I mainly have this lens on the camera and this one in the bag. Otherwise, it's all the backups, right? It's the SD cards and the batteries, and that's about all I got. All right, so I want to talk about why I've chosen some of this gear and why I've chosen primes over zooms. Now, this is a topic that is covered very widely here on YouTube, but for me, I do have the zoom lens as well. I have the kit lens that came with the X-T3. It's the 18 to 55. It's a variable aperture lens, so that's one element, is that although it does go open to 2.8 when you're all the way out at 18 millimeters, when you start to zoom in, that aperture starts to stop down. And so I have to compensate in either my shutter speed or ISO, which I may not always want to do. And so with primes like the 35 millimeter, I can, if I want to, I can leave it at f2 and never touch it. And then no matter what, because I'm not zooming in, it's not going to be forced to stop down at all. It can stay wide open. I can have more control over the style of image that I want to be making. And so by having both the 35 and the 16 millimeter, I'm getting a pretty standard focal length and then a wide focal length that I can bounce between just those two options instead of having everything between 18 and 55. And for me, by narrowing it down to just those two options, I am not overthinking things. I'm focusing on the subjects and compositions that I want to make, and that's why this is my minimal setup. I don't want too many options. I don't want to carry too many things out there. For me, I rarely bring both the digital and the film camera. I usually bring one or the other because I don't even want to have to think about that option when I go out and make photos. Now, one lens that Fuji makes that I don't have and I have not been able to use before is the 23 millimeter f2. It's very similar to this lens as well as the 16 millimeter, but it is more of equivalent to a 35 on a full frame camera. That's one that I am eyeing and hope to get in the future, and maybe add that to this kit, keep it to those three lenses, and this bag, this ONA bag, can fit those easily, because even though you have those three options in your bag, you're not able to switch as quickly. So you have to be thinking only about the focal length that's on your camera at that time. So that is gonna do it. Let me know what is in your minimal kit down in the comments below. What would you add? What would you take away from my kit here? And make sure and give this video a thumbs up as it helps the channel immensely. And hit subscribe so you know when the next video is coming out. But we'll check you in the next one.